Good morning. Happy Wednesday. So, lots of thoughts this morning. Been ruminating a lot. The word going through my head all morning since I got up was the word responsibility. Really sort of complex term in the idea of how we define it and what it means to us. When I think about responsibility, the first thing that comes to my mind is the thought of like becoming an adult. Okay. Throughout all these different cultures, whether it's bar mitzvah or confirmation or any number of, whether vision quest, whatever culture we have a part of, one of the really important things is defining the crossover of the line into adulthood. Legally we talk about turning 18, or I think, in a sense of a lot of our kids, when we give them access to drive in a car, talk about the ultimate responsibilities. But the idea of defining adulthood and responsibility is the idea of when is it that you are able to take care of yourself? When are you going to be responsible for your own behavior, meeting your needs, and doing the things you're supposed to do? And the age in which people learn to take responsibility for themselves in many ways has gotten older and older. And it's something that our culture fights sort of to take away a little bit, in the sense of, when you turn 17 or 18, you go to college or you start to get those credit card offers. The entire purpose of giving you access to credit card offers at that age is that many predatory credit card companies know that you are susceptible to limited responsibility taking. So you are a better candidate to get involved in borrowing money you can't afford to borrow. So they're predators. They come after you. They try to take the idea that now you have a legal responsibility, but you don't have the emotional wherewithal to navigate that. The ultimate aspects of responsibility taking as we get older is that we get married, and then we have children. Children are the ultimate responsibility. They are entities outside of our bodies that we are ultimately responsible for their growth, their safety, all of the things that happen for them. In many ways, the idea of responsibility is about taking control of yourself and being responsible for your choices. But responsibility taking also gives us control. So when I think about the impacts of COVID-19 and I think about teachers, teachers who I work with in low-income schools take tremendous responsibility for the well-being of their children. They make sure they're fed in the morning. They check to make sure they're clothed. In some cases, we find ways to help them with their hygiene and getting them ready to be amongst other people, because that responsibility has been challenging for their biological or caregivers to meet. In taking that responsibility, sometimes it goes a step beyond what you would normally think. People don't think of teachers that way who don't work in education, but that's a big part of what teachers are doing. The other thing about responsibility for them is that when you've taken away the school environment, that ability to help be responsible for that child and their well-being has been torn away from teachers and educators. And in turn, they're also being told you are responsible for checking in, making sure your kids are safe, making sure they're getting access to education, and making sure all efforts are being made to make those connections. Connections were our first option. The problem with that is in people who take very strong responsibility, it becomes a very big burden. It becomes something that they feel that they have to do at all costs. And now that we've taken away the 6.5, 7-hour school day from them, and we've put them in a position to now have that responsibility overflow into other times in their lives, this is one of the things that's affected all of your teachers and the people I work with. The stressors on them have been tremendous because they've been taking massive responsibility for people. The responsibilities that have fallen to us within this time in history are tremendous. I'll give you an example. 2 months ago when my office closed and my job essentially was taken away because my boss said, I can't take financial responsibility for all of you right now because it will take down the company completely. And I'm sorry, but you guys have to be responsible for yourselves right now. And it was a crushing blow because for 15 years, he had been responsible for my paycheck. I did my job. I met my job responsibilities, but the company responsibilities couldn't be met anymore. Not his fault. It was a circumstance. I love him dearly to this day. And ultimately, then what happened was I was now responsible for making my own income, for going out and finding my own way to do the things that I had always done. And that increase in responsibility has resulted in me working harder, trying different things and being innovative. I read a post yesterday from my friend Amy talking about, we're going to look back on this time and we're going to say how hard and how difficult it was, but also how innovating and exciting. Because for some of us, that responsibility has motivated certain kinds of thinking, and that's allowed us to creatively problem solve. One of the hardest things that we're all coping with is the blame game right now. Who's responsible? Whose fault is this? Whose fault is it that the economy is in the tank? And I think that one of the things that happens in a time like this, and I'm not going to go hard political here, is that when we feel that we've lost our stability and our security, we want someone to blame. And when things like this happen, the fight for making someone else responsible can be all-consuming. And it's part of what happens in our political rift right now in our communities, is that somebody somehow blaming someone else and making them responsible is something people think will make them feel better. It won't. It doesn't, because we're here. We're stuck in this situation. So I'm responsible for me and my family. And I'm making choices in the best way I can for protecting them because they're my responsibility. When we talk about shifts in responsibility, responsibility is about control. When someone takes away a responsibility or gives you too much because in their good intentions they want to make sure other people are okay, those responsibilities can be crushing and overwhelming. So for so many of us, knowing your boundaries, where is my responsibility most well spent? How am I going to focus? And I have to let go. For teachers letting go of their kids right now, your responsibility to your children is ending in the way that it's been offered so far. So I absolutely think that right now teachers have to be willing to let go of some of that responsibility and to do things that are going to help them stay safe and healthy. Last thing I really want to bring up, and I'll have more on this tomorrow, I'm thinking, is the idea that if you are in an unhealthy relationship, other people will force you to feel responsible for things that are wrong. They will blame you. They will say, you're responsible. This is your fault. You need to change. You need to do this better. And in those circumstances, people who have been through trauma, people who have been in situations that have been unhealthy throughout their lives, take on too much responsibility. Too much responsibility without cooperation, without love, without shared responsibility can result in significant depression, anxiety, and feelings that people can't cope with. If your relationship and your world right now is providing you with that constant beratement, you are responsible, you are wrong, you need to change. These are things that absolutely require that you take stock. Be responsible for your own self-care. But when life comes at you in that way, you have to ask yourself, am I truly responsible for someone else's feelings? I'm responsible for my behavior, but sometimes people's feelings about my behavior are not my responsibility. I want people to understand that a good, healthy relationship shares responsibility, plays to the strengths of both parties. And when there's an imbalance, you have to work through it. In my relationship, my wife, for example, handles finances like a champ. She is incredible at navigating a budget and finances. And because I have ADHD, my adult responsibility taking has developed more slowly. And I think that that's one of the most important things to consider here, is that we have different strengths. So when she says, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this, this is too much, she's taking on too much responsibility, and we rebalance aspects of our lives based on that. I have friends and loved ones who have been in situations where responsibility taking takes them down, makes them anxious and unhealthy. So at this point in time, I want people to remember responsibility for you is your own. If you need help, share that responsibility with someone you trust and care about. People we love are more than willing to help us take responsibility in the moment. But it's the classic idea of teaching someone to fish versus giving them a fish. If someone helps you, ask them to teach you how they're helping you. Show me what I can do so I can be responsible for myself. Sort of like the best parenting method. Okay, lots of stuff flying at you today. I want more on responsibility tomorrow, but that was stuck in my head. And I hope we really are going to be able to all within the academic setting, the educational world, that we can shift that responsibility and care for ourselves. Thanks, guys, for checking in this morning. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.